Hello, listeners. Thank you for tuning in to this week's Pause for Reflection. And for this Pause for Reflection, I'm coming with, as we all are, I believe, a heavy heart, given what's going on in Israel and Gaza. And so with this show being about exploring and understanding who we are as spiritual beings, living a human existence, and for me, trying to understand what is the role of suffering and why is there so much suffering, and taking a spiritual perspective to understand why did our souls choose this planet, choose these lives, choose this galaxy, and hearing over and over again that Earth School, quote unquote, is the hardest, that we had really, really ambitious and courageous souls to say, that is where I want to go. That is what I want to learn. And so I feel like it would be remiss of me, given how many people I interview, not to pause here, given it's pause for reflection, and start to just verbally process what I'm learning and how that may or may not apply to the horror that is taking place over there. And I know that this reaches people all across the globe, so it could be next door neighbor, right? I say over there, but that's because that's where I am in relationship to Israel, Palestine, Gaza. So what I want to make really clear is I am not offering advice. I am not coming from a place of authority. This truly is me just verbally processing everything I'm learning and asking questions and sharing how I am in relationship to it, how I'm choosing to be in relationship to it, and hopefully it helps you find your way. There's not one way. There are ways, and there is learning, and there's compassion, and there is suffering, and there is perspective. And I want to start with just a huge heartfelt prayer, sending massive amounts of love and light to those who are suffering and who are being murdered and tortured. Children. And why? There will never be any why that is satisfying, particularly not in the scope of this episode right now. So my ambitions in this episode are small in scope. Here's where my curiosity goes, given what I am learning. So as I have shared and my guests have repeatedly shared, is that prior to these incarnations, we sit, so to speak. We consult with our team of counselors to say, what do I want to learn, and what will the details of my life in terms of a mission and a blueprint be before I come into human form, and why? What am I here to learn? How many life lessons? And how do past lives inform those lessons? And a lot of this also is written in the Akashic Records, and that is that library, again, so to speak. Language feels really frustrating. It's conceptually that there are the Akashic Records where things from the past, and again, there is no time, I'm starting to learn, and the future are already written, and yet there is still free will. And with free will, we are always somewhere within the polarity of love consciousness and fear consciousness. And so it makes me think of, God, this is such deep stuff. It's just part of me is like, God, why am I going here? But this is what's real, right? This is what's real. There is terror, there is hatred, there's cruelty, there's genocide, there is war. You know, thinking about the Holocaust, and I remember in reading Richard Martini's work and watching his documentaries that in a woman's life between lives and past life regression. She was killed, and I think in Dachau, as a Jew. And she was reflecting on the life, and she was actually saying, I actually feel more sorry for the SS soldier who perpetrated the crime because of the damage. I don't know, that's not the right word. The toll it took on his soul, and the willingness of that soul to step up and say, for the lesson of humanity, I will play the bad guy. Whether you fundamentally think that is such an egregious point of view, I accept that. I respect that. I'm still filtering what do I believe and subscribe to. That is still in flux as it relates to these things because they are so painful. But just sharing that is what some of the research over and over seems to indicate. So what also comes up for me is there is the human heart in this to have the compassion. I wonder if, and I know, I don't wonder, but I wonder to the extent how many people do what I naturally do is when I hear those stories about children and families and hostages and so forth, I put my family in there. I put my son and my stepdaughters and my husband and my mother and my brothers and my loved ones. And I stay there for a flicker of a moment because to stay there any longer is intolerable. But I do that because we are united in our heart. And I don't want to go to spirituality and philosophizing to bypass it. It's a real balancing act for me. I want to stay connected to my human heart, but I don't want to go too far into despair where I am not able to have agency in my own life, to be a force of good in the world, because there are, all of these energies. We all are energy. This is energy. And that will just dive bomb me into anguish, despair, and hatred. And when I'm thinking about things like anguish and despair and anguish, they have a purpose. And like Christina Brinkley talks about, we need to metabolize our emotions because that's where a lot of the lessons are. We can't stay stuck. That's where, to use the word I skirted before, damage does occur on a soul level, and in our capacity to meet our soul's lessons is what I'm learning. And to recognize that anger has an opportunity to be an initiation for care. So that's important, to feel those feelings and not bypass them, but to not stay stuck in that. And that's a real skill to develop, and it takes courage. And it takes a real care for oneself and others. It would be easier not to feel it, to stay stuck in anger, and Lord knows I have done that in my life. So that is part of the equation for me. That is part of the musing and the wondering. Also, so many times when I listen to those who've had near-death experiences, and I have at this point listened to hundreds, gosh, I wonder if it's even thousands. I'm kind of obsessive about this stuff to help inform why we are here and to have perspective and to remember that we are infinite spiritual souls having a human experience. And by and large, and I don't know the numbers, someone like Richard Wood, I think he said it was like 70 or 80%, I could be wrong, have really positive near-death experiences where it is that bliss consciousness. But with this idea that we do choose before our incarnations, and coupling that with the fact that some things are simply written into the Akashic Records, so many people I have heard, whether it is talking about, God, I don't even want to, whether it's slavery or the Native Americans or what's going on in Ukraine or the Holocaust or now this. I mean, I could spend the next hour recounting so many historical events that you ask, why? Why is this happening? And those who've had near-death experiences and those who are psychic mediums say, well, it was in the Akashic Records. It was already written. And those souls, both on the sides of the perpetrator as well as the sides of the victims, they signed up to say, yes, I will step up and I will do this. Do with that what you will. I'm not saying whether that is true or whether that is not true. That is what I repeatedly hear, and that is something I'm sitting with. None of this, I hope anyone who is listening, this is not about me taking a moral stance one way or the other. It's simply sharing where what I'm learning is filtering through how I move through this experience. The thing that helps get me through as I bear witness and as I care is because of having listened to so many near-death experiences, and with them predominantly being beyond beautiful, loving, blissful experiences for those who pass to the other side, is that the victims will move to that consciousness and their suffering will end. And they will, to use Martha Hayman's perspective, they will know the secret. They will know why. And for those of us left on the planet to grieve, to question why, that's where the real suffering is. But once they've crossed over, the suffering ends. So when I think about living in this particular period of time, and I do believe that my soul did choose this, and recognizing that we are living through a time in history, a window in history, where there's about to be some radical change, just in terms of artificial intelligence and technology and the intersection with humanity and how we are in relationship to ourselves and others. And what keeps me hopeful is that I am hearing and I am hoping that there continues to be, over the next 100 years, a raise in consciousness, that these conversations that I'm having aren't the outliers, they are more the rule, and that we are able to connect with one another, our guides, humanity's source, the divinity, in a way that is more commonplace, because things are about to change in ways that I think feel sort of Twilight Zone-y for most of us. And so as I sit with just today, for me, it feels important to stay aware of what is happening, but not to overdose on it, because it could annihilate me emotionally, and that is not helpful to me or anyone else, but to stay aware, because I care about suffering of my fellow humans. For me, it just means, with this polarity of love consciousness versus fear consciousness, that I need to be as intentional as I can be, starting with myself, to show myself unconditional love. Unconditional love. And man, that's hard for me. When I blunder, when I hurt someone's feelings, when I hurt my own feelings, whatever the case may be, whenever I misspeak, whenever I want to just crawl under the covers, and that can be a good thing, that I show such love towards people in my family, in my life, that I love and care about, but also to strangers, that I'm more patient, that I'm more generous, that I'm more forgiving. That is something I can do. And because all of this is consciousness and energy, to take time with my thoughts and my prayers. And I tell you what, I hate that, thoughts and prayers. I think about gun control and another mass shooting and children have been murdered. I don't want it to sound like just thoughts and prayers, because that is not enough, but it is something. When I sit here at the other side of the world, knowing, to the extent that I can know what is happening, that my consciousness, as well as the consciousness of millions of people who care, that we can send love and light, and that it does have an effect. That effect, I don't know to what extent, but that gives me agency when I don't know what else to do. So that is, I could talk for much longer, but I will close it out there, knowing that those of you who choose to tune in and to listen to me and to my miraculous, beautiful guests, you are those too who want to live a life that is meaningful, that you want to seek spiritual understanding, that you want to live in love consciousness, and I know that you care about the suffering of others. And I thank you for that, because knowing that you're out there and I get to see through Buzzsprout where you are in the world and the numbers, it gives me hope for humanity. So I want to thank you for listening. And you know how to reach me, Coach Kristin Taylor at gmail.com. If you have thoughts that you want me to share, if you just want to share prayers, I am here to receive and to give and to be a part of that. So I thank you for listening, and may we all find our way through. Sending you love.
How I Made It Through is produced and distributed by EIQ Media, LLC. Elevate your emotional IQ with podcasts and content focused on overcoming adversity, leadership, mental health, entrepreneurship, spiritually transformative experiences, and more.